Good evening. My name is Karl Weaver. Today's presentation is titled, Can the Apple iPhone be produced in North America? I say it can be produced in North America. My name is Karl Weaver again, Newport Technologies, and let us start by discussing a little bit about my background. So I'm the rainmaker for the AI chip supply chain and for business growth. Again, my name is Karl Weaver, Wei Kar in Chinese. I am a mobile industry specialist. I'm bilingual in Mandarin, and I've been involved in taking cutting edge technologies and getting them designed into the supply chain for Asia Pacific for more than 3 decades. And I've lived in Taiwan, China, and Singapore. Let's move forward. So let's talk about labor costs for China versus India because now all iPhones are manufactured, well, most iPhones are manufactured in China, but they are also starting to be manufactured in India. So let's take a summary of, let's say, the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Let's look at the BOM costs, which are $515 for the A17 Pro, which is that's the chip used, the display, and the titanium frame. These are some of the top um, costs for the iPhone 15 Pro. As you can see here, you can see the cost. The BOM cost is $550. You can also see the retail price is $1,199. So basically, BOM cost increase year on year, year over year, 12%. Now, the iPhone 15, the labor costs, when you move this to India, they are 3 to 5 times cheaper in India than China. But China remains dominant in high-skill precision manufacturing. India hasn't reached China's prowess. Apple is gradually increasing its India production to diversify risk and reduce exposure to China. There's just a lot of geopolitical issues going on here. Now, if you look at the region, China and India, you see the labor cost, $5 to $10 in China, and that's at their Foxconn Zhengzhou core iPhone production hub. In India, it's $1.50 to $2.50 per hour. That's at the Foxconn Wistron Tata growing Apple production base there. And if you look at the components now, the A17 Pro chipset, that is 27% more than the A16, all made by TSMC. The OLED display, so the chip is $130. The OLED display is $115. Titanium frame 50. The camera 30. Storage 27. And the other components make about 206. So as you can see there, this is where the $558 comes from. Let's move forward. Now, if you look at the iPhone production, if we were to move that into Mexico for the iPhone 15, well, this would be a strategic scenario. Look at the bill of materials for the iPhone 15 Pro. Basically, the BOM cost doesn't change. The components like the A17 chip from TSMC, OLED display, Samsung or LG, the camera modules, Sony, they're still sourced, and they will be for this point in time. They're going to be sourced in Asia, but that will change because TSMC is up and running with their fab in Phoenix, Arizona. The iPhone components are globally sourced, but the final assembly location, it doesn't significantly change the core component costs. So I've separated component and labor costs so that we can compare those things. Now, if you look at the geopolitical and the supply chain implications, now that's quite significant. So if you look at the supply chain, China, it's very, very mature. India is not so mature. Mexico is not mature at all because they're not manufacturing in Mexico. It doesn't mean they can't. My opinion is that they will. Now, shipping times, 2 to 4 weeks by sea from China to the United States. If it were in India, 2 to 3 weeks from India to the United States. In Mexico, 2 to 5 days. So you can see the significant increase in ability to get the iPhone if it were manufactured in Mexico. Tariffs, they're subjects to tariffs, and those tariffs are ongoing and bloody cumbersome right now for China. India, much lower. But however, India itself has taxes when you import components and when you re-export. With Mexico, zero tariffs with the USMCA, which is their trade agreement. Political risk, very high. US and China right now, a lot of tensions. India, medium, and Mexico is quite low. Skilled labor for electronics, very, very high in China. In fact, everybody manufactures in China their smartphones. But there are assembly taking place in other countries. Eventually, I think sooner or later, or at least some Chinese companies are actually assembling on the African continent and India and other parts, maybe even Indonesia one day. Um, so the skill labor situation in China is very, very high. In India right now, it's only moderate. In Mexico, it's only moderate. It's not to say that Mexico has not manufactured feature and smartphones along the Maquiladora border. They have. And so Mexican offers logistics and trade advantages for US bound iPhone production, potentially reducing uh, final delivery times by up to 50 to 80%. That's significant. Now, if you look at the labor comparison between China and India, China, Mexico, and India, you will see that China's labor cost per hour is $5 to $10. India, it's $1.50 to $2.50. Mexico, it's $3.50 to $4.50. So obviously, India is the lowest cost of these countries that we're discussing. China's labor is highly skilled, fast ramp up, dense ecosystem. Their Zhengzhou plan has been there for at least a decade. Um, India's low cost and it is growing in its capabilities, and it's taken some time for that to occur, but it's occurring. Mexico, $3.50 to $4.50. Competitive wages close to the United States along the border, and it's the USMCA trade access. So duty free. That's an amazing thing. Mexico's labor cost is lower than China, but it's higher than India. The benefits are the USMCA and faster shipping to North America, fewer tariffs. So, I mean, technically Mexico is on the border with North America, and so it really is an ideal situation to consider. Drawbacks, limited scale and electronics assembly versus China and India. Actually, I'm not 100% sure that's exactly correct, but of course, obviously, Apple iPhones with Foxconn, Honghai are manufacturing in China right now, and they're also manufacturing in India right now. Um, but it doesn't mean Foxconn has not manufactured in Mexico and is not manufacturing certain ICT sector things in Mexico. They are. So the estimated final assembly cost impact, China, $6 to $8 per unit, labor plus overhead. India, $4 to $6 per unit. Mexico, $5 to $7 per unit. With lower logistics costs to the USA, Mexico might save $5 to $15 unit in distribution and import duties. So these are very significant things to look at. Now, the summary for now, let's talk about the pro and con of producing iPhones in Mexico. The pro is nearshoring to the US, logistics win. It's a real logistics win. You avoid the China-US tariff risks. It's a real strategy for the Trump administration to uh, tariff imports of things. Competitive labor rates versus China, very competitive in Mexico. Faster time to market, that's very obvious. But the weak things are high volume electronics capability. Mexico might not be quite ready for that. They, of course, have fewer skilled electronics engineers, but you know what? It's not difficult to get skilled engineering labor to go and work in Mexico. Whether it's from China, whether it's from Mexico or India, people will go. If you build it, they will come. There's no native chip or display ecosystem in Mexico, but they're manufacturing electric vehicles from China in Mexico, so I think that that's going to change. Now, it would also depend on uh, certain parts still coming from Asia and importing into Mexico. But then again, that's not expensive. So if Apple moved to final assembly of the high-end iPhones like the Pro line to Mexico, that's the Pro 15 to Pro 16. A few months from now, we'll be talking about Pro 17. They could reduce logistics time to North America by 80%, significant. Potentially, they could save $10 to $15 per unit in tariffs and shipping, depending on the tariffs. And they can gain a strategic independence from China's geopolitical risk. This is the reason why decoupling is happening, because of geopolitical risk, techno-nationalism, protectionism in China. Now, however, Mexico still lacks the deep and also the hyper specialized electronics ecosystem in China. They simply do. China really has a very specific niche and lots of talented, specialized engineers, assembly workers who've been doing assembly of iPhones for more than a decade. India is growing as well, but not as sophisticated as China, obviously. So complete relocation is not yet feasible, but hybrid assembly models, these kinds of hybrid assemblies, these models could actually emerge, and I perceive that they will emerge. Now, why using NAFTA or USMC labor and trade framework makes sense? Well, it's quite obvious. United States, Canada, and Mexico, NAFTA or the USMCA. This is a strategic trade partnership. So as examples of smartphones or electronic products that are already being produced along the border, the Maquila-Dorada, Foxconn has facility in Juarez. Sorry, my Spanish is not very good. Chihuahua across from El Paso in Texas. So it's actually not just Arizona border. You can talk about the Arizona border, you can talk about the New Mexico border, or you can talk about the Texas border, maybe even south of Los Angeles, or the the border with Los Angeles, Baja California. Pegatron is actually also manufacturing along the border. Flextronics, Flex, Jabil. So you see, Taiwanese contract manufacturers have actually been manufacturing all along in these border areas certain ICT sector products. Let me move forward. New supply chain. Component sourcing from the USA. Well, TSMC Arizona constructed plant, that's up and running. That is growing daily. That's from TSMC Taiwan. You can see a lot of reduced geopolitical risk, but a little bit higher cost to manufacture in Arizona. The Taiwanese love living in Arizona. It's a dry heat. It's very hot and humid in Taiwan, but at least 7, 8 months out of the year. Now, the NAND and DRAM memory, well, Micron of Boise, Idaho, has basically is planning to reshore 60% of its DRAM and NAND memory to New York and a little bit to Boise, Idaho. So there are 3 major memory component suppliers in the world today: Micron, SK Hynix, and Samsung. So and the iPhone uses Micron and SK Hynix. So less China exposure. It's actually better for IP protection. And the assembly sites, again, the Mexican Maquila-Dorada in Sonora, and that's, for example, Nogales, or Tamaulipas, again, Reynosa. Again, my apologies, my Spanish is not very good. My Mandarin is fluent. Now, labor cost, $4 an hour, midpoint between China and India. Labor cost in Mexico. USMCA compliant, 0 tariffs. Estimated cost impact. Well, the China model is $130 for the CPU. The Mexico price is $160 to $180. But you can expect that to go down, because if they're manufacturing in Arizona, they'll be very, very lower. It should be lower cost over time. The memory, $27 in China. It's $30 to $35. Again, if Micron is manufacturing back in the United States, you can expect to see those prices go down. Logistics, $12 to $20 per unit for shipping, whereas Land freight, not ships. Land freight, $2 to $5 from the border. Import tariffs up to 15% from China. Not sure about India at this point in time. 0% for USMC for along the border with Mexico. Final assembly costs $6 to $8 from China, but it's only $5 to $6 for Mexican border labor. That's cheaper than China. Total BOM costs $550 base compared to $570 to $590. This is quite significant. Now, let's look at the strategic and the geopolitical issues. Well, the benefits are geopolitical risk is it's less reliant on Taiwan, Korea, or China for the chips and the memory, the key components. Although Taiwan is an ally, TSMC is a Taiwanese company. Um, Actually, Korean vendors are moving a lot more to Texas, like Samsung, and Taiwan is moving to Arizona. But both places are good. Faster time to market, border facilities, iPhones in U.S. retail will be there in days, not weeks or months. Trade efficiency, yeah, USMCA rules allow for seamless movement of goods, no stoppage. IP protection and national security, hell yes, you're along the border, you can have high level of IP protection as well as security. People steal chips as well. So not just the iPhone, they steal semiconductor chips. Reduction of espionage and supply chains for sure. Challenges, capacity and yield. TSMC's Arizona plant, um, they're in production with low yields now, but that they need another 6 months to ramp up. By 2026, there'll be high yields. Um, Higher fabrication cost, of course, they're manufacturing in the United States. So it's 20-30% more than manufacturing in Taiwan, but that is going to reduce because the first yield was quite significant, quite successful. Skilled labor shortages, for sure. Mexico has a skilled labor shortage in Arizona, but I anticipate Taiwanese, Taiwanese, Koreans, Indians will flock to Arizona for those jobs. That's my humble opinion. Here's my summary, North American iPhone vision. This is Karl's vision. Bottom line is if Apple uses TSMC in Arizona for the fabrication of the mobile apps processor chips, and also Micron for the NAND DRAM memory, and Mexican border assembly, it could create the first fully North American-based iPhone supply chain and maintain competitive cost structures while boosting resilience and efficiency. It'll minimize the dependence on Asia, the shipping, reduce exposure to China, China, and also some tensions are obviously going on between the Taiwan Straits. So here is the cost comparison chart showing the estimated per cost for producing iPhone in a traditional Chinese-based model versus Mexico, U.S. supply chain with U.S. source chips. So I have a diagram here that shows, U.S. and China, China and India assembly, um, and also basically bringing final assembly. So final assembly it occurs in the United States, but most of the components are still coming from China or India, or final assembly takes place along the border with U.S. U.S. components, U.S. chips, U.S. manufacturing along the border. And so you see, you've got two different scenarios there. And I list some here. I list the iPhone cost comparisons between the two. So you can see there the key takeaways of this discussion today are CPU and memory costs are higher in Mexico. The US model is due to the US fabrication, but that's going to go down. Logistics and tariffs costs drop significantly, which is obvious when it's USMCA. That's the whole goal of having North America close together to do the manufacturing. Final assembly labor will be slightly cheaper in Mexico than China. Yeah, China's costs are going up. When it comes to security, Stronger U.S. control of key tech infrastructure is very, very important. There's a lot of IP theft. Costs slightly higher per unit, but it'll be offset by logistics. Time to market, the iPhones reach U.S. customers in 2 to 4 days. If you drive down to the border, you can get it in one day. I imagine Apple will have a store somewhere along the border. Time to market. And also sustainability, shorter freight, lower carbon emissions. It helps the world. Jobs, yeah, there'll be lots of jobs in Arizona, New York, Texas, and Mexico. That is my presentation. Again, my name is Karl Weaver, and this presentation I gave to you for Newport Technologies, which is my supply chain consultancy. I help Western companies sell to the AI chip supply chain in the Far East. And I have connections in Arizona. I worked for Freescale Semiconductor from 2004 to 2005. I spent a year working in Freescale Semiconductor, which was acquired by NXP. So I have all the expertise to help you in your quest to source components. And that is my presentation. Again, this is Karl Weaver. Thank you very, very much. My presentation, can the Apple iPhone be produced in North America? According to today's presentation, the slides, absolutely it can happen, especially the assembly sites along the Mexican border, the Mexican Maquiladoras in Sonora, that's Nogales, or Tamaulipas, Reynosa. Sorry for the translation there. That is where I think, due to the USMCA compliant regulations, zero tariffs will be something very attractive for manufacturers along the border to produce the iPhone.